Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I've been strengthening brands through PR for over 35 years, and now I'm celebrating the success of executives, influencers, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all around the world, all of whom have cultivated their brands and broadened their networks through traditional and digital networking methods. Each week, I interview one of these interesting and influential individuals and provide an opportunity for you, the PR Maven Nation, to gain insights from their strategies and stories. So stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. Hello, PR Maven Nation. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, episode number 51, presented by Marshall Communications, creator of the Marshall Plan 65-Step Strategic Process. For those of you who are new to the show, I am your host, Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. And for those of you who have been loyal listeners, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. This podcast provides my unique perspective on the world of public relations and personal branding, including what I hope will be actionable takeaways. I want to emphasize the importance of enhancing your traditional relationship building with today's new technology. And I'm going to enjoy talking with today's guest about how I have sort of urged him along the path of social media over the past few years. So my guest today is a longtime friend and professional associate, George Smith, who's a Maine writer from Mount Vernon. And actually, we are at his beautiful home in Mount Vernon today by the lake, and we'll ask him more about the lake here. He's an avid outdoorsman, so I'm sure he loves fishing in this lake here, and we'll talk about that. But George has done a lot of things in his life, from writing comprehensive plans for rural Maine towns to managing statewide referendum campaigns. He served as executive director of the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine for 18 years, and he grew the membership from 4,000 to 14,000 and made it one of the state's most influential organizations. George left the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine at the end of 2010 to write full-time. He writes an outdoor news blog posted on his website and the website of the Bangor Daily News, cited by the Maine Press Association in 2014 as the state's best sports blog. He has written a weekly editorial column published in the Kennebec Journal and the Waterville Morning Sentinel for 28 years, and columns for the Maine Sportsman magazine since 1977, and special columns for magazines and the newsletters of various Maine organizations. In 2017, George was diagnosed with ALS, and one of the reasons that I wanted to do this podcast with him today is that he has handled his diagnosis with such grace and tenacity, and I just have watched how he's been a role model for people who are facing serious challenges in their lives. So welcome, George.
Thank you, Nancy. I don't think I can improve on that introduction, so we need to end the show now.
Well, it's been nice being here, George. Thank you.
Okay.
Now tell us about the lake that we're looking at out the window.
Linda and I got married and lived in Winthrop, and it was too big for us. We looked for a little town, and we ended up with this house because we loved the area. And behind the house on this direction, there's a Minnehaha Lake. Then I have a brook. Then I have the pond. Then I have the stream. You can start in a kayak here and go 2.5 miles through the woods. And now I don't want people to know there are fish here.
No.
Nancy, so let's not tell them that.
I'm sure there's no brook trout.
Shh. Let's be quiet about that.
You're right.
But
it's a beautiful
and the house
spot.
was built in 1796.
You would never know it. It's so beautifully preserved.
I have a photo from 1900 in front of the house, and as far as you can see was farms.
Oh, wow.
And now it's all woods.
Yeah.
That's how things have changed.
Wow. That's great.
Well, I just wrote a newspaper column. I think it'll be in the first Wednesday in August. the KJ and Sentinel, about how things have changed in my lifetime. It's almost unbelievable. When I started my newspaper column, I wrote it on a manual typewriter. I drove it to Augusta. They retyped it. Now, what has changed today? Type it on the computer, email it in.
I know. I feel the same way about some of the things that I used to do with press releases, and we used to use a mimeograph machine, with the Mimeomaster.
I remember that.
Yeah, I used to love the way that smelled.
Yeah, so a lot has changed.
Yeah, well, I look forward to reading that column.
Well, as you won't be surprised, a lot of the changes are not good. I feel bad for kids today. They never get. We grew up in the woods. Kids don't go in the woods today.
I know.
So many things have changed for kids. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I played every sport. I played in the band. When my high school basketball team went down for halftime, I walked over and played with the band. Now, kids can't do that today, Nancy.
Right.
You specialize in one thing or another.
Right. And another one of the platforms of this podcast actually is the fact that people need to grow their network of contacts both in person and online. And one of the things I fear is that the young people, they're not comfortable having a conversation face-to-face like what we're doing. And actually some of the older people in our generation aren't really comfortable with the technology. So I feel that people really need to connect with others both ways in order to really have a full life experience. I feel you need to do both.
That is true. This afternoon, actually, we have our monthly group meeting at Maine Journal with a lot of other people and their caregivers who have ALS. And that's a wonderful experience. I always learn from all these people. But like you said, some of them are very private. They're not online. Some of us are on Facebook. I'm on there thanks to you, And we're connected. But a lot of people are disconnected from the world. And when you have a serious illness, that makes it really tough. Because I have a list here of probably 30 friends and neighbors that will come do anything for us. People want to help you, but you have to let them know. And that's tough for a lot of people. You're right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there are definitely pros and cons of social media, and I know that social media can be used for not the best of intentions.
Yeah.
However, I think you have seen benefits of your involvement on Facebook, and I know that you have chosen not to be on Instagram and Twitter just because it takes too much time.
Too much. Well, I have like 3,500 friends on Facebook.
Right.
I mean, I probably know 50 of them.
Right.
Not really my friends, but they do read my columns, so that's good.
Right, exactly. And I'm sure they're all inspired also.
Well, sometimes they get into fierce arguments amongst themselves. Now, if that's on my Facebook page, I take off nasty comments. But if it's on the Bangor Daily, I can't.
No.
And sometimes they go on for days.
Yeah.
Arguing with each other about a column I wrote.
Wow.
It's incredible, really.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about how you originally got into your writing career and what inspired you to get into it in the first place.
Everything I've ever done in my career involved writing, starting with the 70s when I managed Dave Emory's first campaign for Congress. Now, here's a quick story. We spent $36,000 that campaign and beat an incumbent Democrat, Peter Kairos. Last year, Jared Golden and Bruce Poliquin's campaign, they spent $25 million. And most of it was out-of-state groups that don't have to disclose their donors or anything. Politics has changed, but I went to D.C. with Dave. I started a newsletter, which I wrote for him. So that's really when I started. And then every job I had were like referendums, or I wrote comprehensive plans. So I did a lot of writing. When I was at the Sportsman's Alliance, we created I'm very proud of the newsletter we created. And I wrote the whole thing, 8 or 10 pages a month. And I wrote testimony at the legislature. And back, 29 years ago, Doug Rooks was the editor at the KJ, and he hired me to write a weekly column. And people ask today, how every week for 29 years did you come up with an editorial page idea for a column? And I said, well, don't you read the newspaper every day? Something aggravates me every day.
Yeah, right.
Some days I could write 3 editorials.
Right.
But what I've noticed since I was diagnosed, I focus more on main stories, my stories. People like that a lot better than my political columns.
Right.
So I've been doing more of those.
Now, are you writing in a different way now because your hands have been impacted?
Well, I can only use a couple fingers, but I have that Dragon software. I use that a lot with those earphones right there.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you've got a pair of
So
earphones.
I can talk and it types my words. Now it's not perfect. I have to correct it every once in a while. But it's very helpful.
Yeah, so that's Dragon Naturally Speaking. Is that the
Yes.
name of the software?
And I've been told by people when it first started, it was terrible.
Yeah, I tried it out, I think, when it first started, and I abandoned it. It was too frustrating.
This actually works pretty good.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So, George, if you had to do your career all over again, what would you do differently?
Absolutely nothing, Nancy.
That's amazing.
Well, it's even like people today, I can't hunt or fish, and they think I must be frustrated, but I had an amazing career. You know, my friend Harry Van White and I had a TV show. Harry
For how
had
many years?
14.
Yeah, and that was
weekly
the main
talk show.
sportsman.
Well, what did we call it? Wildfire.
Wildfire, that's right, the Wildfire, yeah.
And the shows Harry and I liked the best was when we had no guests, because we had plenty to talk about. And then Harry had his own outdoor show, and I mean, he took me to far northern Quebec, the Florida Keys, and we did stories. And then I have a friend in Montana who has a fly fishing business, so I signed up for every conference in Montana, and I'd stay and visit with him. And we fished every river in Montana. Then I had a friend that had a business representing Alaska lodges, and he took me on 2 extended trips to Alaska where we visited every lodge he represented. Had adventures like you wouldn't believe. And then I took Linda to Alaska and we fished. I have a picture of Linda on the Salmon River from behind. She's just cast, and 10 yards away, a giant grizzly bear was looking at her. And the river was full of grizzly bears.
And you were taking her picture, not making sure
Well,
she was not going to be attacked by the grizzly?
We did have guides with guns, but
yeah,
they just said, don't play your fish. Get it right in. Don't get an interest of a bear. Took a little getting used to fishing, and there's a bear, and there's a bear, you know. But I've had incredible adventures, really. And my career was wonderful.
Well, and I think it's great that because you were a writer, I mean, you must have been a reader also growing
I
up.
still am a reader.
Yeah, and don't you think there's a correlation between being an avid reader and being a good writer?
I think very definitely. And, you know, the last 3 years I've been doing book reviews for a lot of Maine publishers, and we have such great writers in Maine. It's amazing. I especially love the children's books, the illustrations and everything, and a lot of those go to my little granddaughters.
How old are they?
2.5 and 5. And of course, the 5-year-old's in charge, you know.
Oh, I see this note. Grampy, we love you. We hope you have a
Yes.
good Father's Day.
Yeah.
Now, who is that from?
That's Ada and Esme. Those are both of them.
And Ada was your mother's name, wasn't it?
That's right. Every other generation we've had an Ada. All the way back to my great-grandparents, who were the lighthouse keepers at West Quoddy Head Lighthouse for 32 years, and she was Ada.
Wow. So you've had this adventurous spirit in your family. It's part of your DNA.
Well, my dad had me out hunting at, I think I was 12. You know, I can remember there was a bounty on porcupines, and Dad would give me a .22 and send me out in the woods.
At age 12? Oh, wow.
And I'd shoot porcupines, and you had to cut off the legs and bring them to the town office, and you got 25 cents.
Oh.
So, I mean...
How did you cut off the legs of a porcupine?
Oh, I had a knife, you know.
Ugh.
Well, you know, when I went to elementary school, all the boys had knives, and in recess we'd play knife games. And then in high school, I'd take my shotgun to school and leave it in the back of the room. So after school, I'd hunt in the orchard. And I had a friend who, he and his teacher brought their shotguns because they hunted together. Now today it's a felony.
Yeah.
You know,
Isn't
what a
that
change.
yeah, right. Isn't that
And you would not send a 12-year-old kid in the woods by himself with a rifle.
You'd probably get arrested.
But honestly, I feel blessed with my life.
Yeah.
You know, when I was 12, I worked 3 jobs. I was in the 4-H, sold my vegetables in front of Dad's store, mowed lawns, and I worked in Dad's store.
In Winthrop.
Yeah, Wilson Dolls. So I was named for George Wilson. And my favorite job was roasting the peanuts and cashews, but they eventually discovered I was eating all the profits. And when I was 16, I worked in the Carlton Woolen Mill, and I mixed the chemicals that they dipped the cloth into, and I drove a front-end loader. Now, they wouldn't let a 16-year-old do that today, you know?
No, I don't think OSHA would approve of that.
No, I guess it's lucky I lived.
Yeah, right. So, can you give me an example of how PR and social media have helped to advance you personally or your organization or a client you've worked with?
Well, you know, from my work with the newspapers to our TV show, and, you know, I worked with everybody. Well, you probably remember Gene Letourneau. He wrote about hunting and fishing, Central and Southern Maine newspapers every day for 50 years. And nobody does that today. So I had to reach out to reporters and magazines. For quite a while, I wrote articles for Down East Magazine, actually. And you have to be very aggressive, you know. And a lot of people think when I worked for the Sportsman's Alliance, it was all about hunting and fishing, but one of my best alliances was with Maine Audubon. Well, I came up with the idea for the Maine Outdoor Heritage Fund, and they partnered with us. He gets his money from an instant lottery game, and they've given over $20 million now for wildlife habitat and outdoor recreation programs. I was on the advisory board for 10 years. It's a wonderful program. I mean, with the environmental groups, we created the Land for Maine's Future program when Angus was governor. And so I'm proud of all that, you know, really. We worked together.
Right.
And we reached out to the media. You had to be aggressive.
Right.
To get into the news. But we achieved a lot, so it was reportable.
Well, and I also think not only being aggressive, but also having a newsworthy angle. And you probably thought like a reporter. You knew how they thought. You weren't just promoting fluff.
No.
Because if you were promoting fluff, they wouldn't listen to you. Take your call.
You've made a career out of this.
Yeah.
You know, you have to have real news.
Right.
And we did. I mean, we had a lot of things we worked on.
With social media, how has that changed the way you've worked?
Well, thanks to you, I'm on Facebook I basically, on my page, put links to my columns.
Right.
But it got
and
me
what
a
is
lot.
your page if people want to follow you?
George Smith Maine.
George Smith Maine, okay.
My website is georgesmithmaine.com.
Right.
And you can access pretty much everything I'm writing. For 7 years, Linda and I wrote weekly travel columns for the KJ Sentinel. They're on there in Best of Maine. You pick the town and you can read about the inns and restaurants that we like. And a lot of people still use that for their travel. We just helped 2 different couples plan their trips to Lubec and Campobello, which we loved, you know. And one of them brought me back Monica's chocolates.
Oh, that's great.
And one of them brought me back beer from the new brewery. So
oh, that's great.
it works to help people, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to go back to Sam because a lot of my job was lobbying at the legislature. And quite often I would put in bills to provoke the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife to do something. Because state government doesn't initiate much. But because the legislature supported my bills, we achieved a lot. And better than 90% of my members every year said they belonged to SAM because I represented them at the legislature. And when I started, Nancy, it was a real fun place. The Senate would adjourn. We'd go into the Senate President's office. He had a bar. You'd have a drink. And everybody went to dinner at the Gus House. They became friends. And it didn't mean they agreed, but when you're friends, you work things out. Now, they banned alcohol, I think 12 years ago. I've been joking. They need to bring it back.
Yeah, right.
But what they need to do is step away from the sessions and spend time with each other. They don't even know each other today, so it's much easier to be partisan when you don't even know these people.
I know that's something that our U.S. Senator Angus King speaks about a lot, is that he enjoys barbecue with Republicans and Democrats. And he says when you know someone's kids' names, that's when you're truly a friend and can work across the aisle.
I'll tell you a funny Angus story. Of course, I worked on all his campaigns with my sister Edie, and I think it was the first campaign. We wanted a real Mainer to do an ad, so we picked my dad. And we filmed it in his living room. And Dad's message was essentially, yes, Angus is from Virginia, but he's still okay.
Yeah.
And when that went on TV, he went up 5 points in the poll.
Wow.
And he and Dad became great friends.
Yeah.
And Angus visited Dad in Douglas Hospice quite a few times. He does a lot of that without wanting anybody to know. You know, he's just a wonderful guy, really.
Yeah. Yeah, he is. He's one of my mentors, for
well,
sure.
And then, I grew up with Jared Golden's dad, Joy, who owned Springwood Golf Club with his wife. And so I helped Jared in his campaign. And he's an outstanding young man. And about a month ago, he was criticized for being the Democrat who supported Donald Trump's proposals more than anybody else. Well, it was only 7%. But when you look at all the things he supported, they mattered to his district. He really doesn't care about politics, what party it is. He's trying to help his district. But he's been roasted because 7% of the time he supported Trump's proposals.
Yeah.
You know, that's terrible. When Dave Emory and I went, we were two 26-year-old young Republicans. We arrived in Congress, no idea what we were doing. And Ed Muskie was this big, prominent Democrat. And Ed did everything he could to help us. We met in his private Senate office. And now today, no prominent member of one party would help a young person in the other party. Mm. And a lot of Dave's friends, we were Republicans, but a lot of his good friends were Democrats. You know, and that's all gone.
Right. I think that's the true definition of leadership.
I agree, but that is also the way things used to work, whether it was in Washington or Augusta.
Yeah, yeah.
People work together.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a brief break now. We'll be back for some more of our conversation with George. Now we're going to do a giveaway of my book, PR Works, which George wrote a beautiful review of when I came out with that. And one of our Things to Do pads, which is a coveted item by many people. And if you go to prmaven.com/giveaway, you can enter. And George, you might get one in the mail. So just say, you don't need to.
Okay. I won't take it away from somebody else.
Okay. We'll be back in just a moment. This podcast is all about growing your network in order to strengthen your brand. In my 30-plus year marketing and PR career, I have seen many organizations waste their precious time and money on marketing because they're trying to obtain success without any strategy to achieve their goals. So many organizations and companies suffer from what I call the shiny object syndrome, trying every new fad that comes down the pike. That's why I created the Marshall Plan 15 years ago. We have done over 100 of these plans for clients, helping them to get out of their day-to-day routine to identify their goals, solidify their brand story, focus in on their ideal customer avatar, analyze their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and create a realistic budget and measurement dashboard. We create the Marshall Plan collaboratively with our clients over the course of 3 months. We have a 65-step process to create a highly customized, actionable plan. And it's not like we come in and say, we are the consultants from away and we know everything. Instead, we come in and say, let's sit down at the table with your leadership team and we'll bring our expertise in what's working in PR and marketing. And our client team brings their knowledge of what's working in their organization. and together we come up with a really amazing plan. For many, it's been a transformative process. I have watched how teams have come together and their faces light up because they have such a sense of accomplishment and they're so excited about the future of their organization. We help our client figure out the best way to implement the plan, sometimes using people within their organization and sometimes with our help. We would love to chat with you about how you can expand your network and achieve your marketing goals with a Marshall Plan. Go to marshallpr.com/MarshallPlan to learn more about the process, or better yet, send me an email at nancy@prmaven.com and we'll set up a time to talk and get started. And now back to our conversation. So welcome back, and today we're talking with George Smith, who's a Maine writer and a man of many talents. And I want to dive back in with more questions. And George, you were just talking about gratitude, and you were talking about it in reference with when your father was in hospice. However, I feel that your attitude of gratitude about the life that you have led has helped you to deal with your ALS diagnosis. And tell me how you were diagnosed in 2017 and how you have dealt with that. I mean, obviously there's the physical, but also maybe the psychological might be almost worse.
I have found a lot of ALS patients to be inspiring. A lot of them really are somehow maintain a good sense of humor, and
well, have.
I was determined it changes your life dramatically. Like, I don't leave the house much. A lot of my friends come, they bring lunch. The governor even came with lunch one time, and it had been made in the Blaine house, so we're in the dining room eating lunch, and I said, Janet, I feel like I'm getting a tax refund here. But my whole life has had to change. I don't hunt and fish. I do spend the mornings writing, then visit with people. But now that I've got the power chair and a van that I can travel in, I go with Linda whenever she goes someplace. And like the other day, I was cruising around Shaw's, I'm not sure that pleases Linda, but the big thing is that your caregiver does so much. She has to do everything for me, and I do have a lot of friends that come and help, whatever we need. Like, they came all winter and shoveled with her. And it is frustrating they can't do all these things, but try to make the most of every day. That's all you can do. And realize that you're very limited in what you can do. But there's a group in Massachusetts, the ALS Charitable Family Foundation. It's two ladies whose husband died of ALS, and they do everything from helping you pay your heating bills to giving you $2,000 for a vacation. So our kids and grandkids all came down to Samoset. We had this wonderful weekend, and they paid $2,000 of our costs. And there's a fellow in my group that meets every month. They paid for him in his wheelchair to go on a bear hunt, and he got a bear.
Wow.
He went up to Worcester County and got a guide, and I said, Richard, I'll bet that's the first time they ever paid for a bear hunt, But there's actually quite a lot of help out there. And the one thing I've been doing is making sure everybody knows, and the ALS Association is great at this. Their staff for Laurie's meets with everybody that has ALS and make sure they're connected to all these groups. Alpha One, and sent out an architect and looked over our house, told us what we needed to do, make it accessible. And so you just do the best you can, Nancy. Really.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, ALS or not, that's kind of what we're all trying to do, right? Well, just make the most of every day. And
one thing I appreciate is people like Janet. They've stayed in touch with me.
That's our governor, Janet Mills.
And I was a big advocate for Judy Camuso to be our Fish and Wildlife Commissioner. She's the first woman. Janet appointed her. She's doing an awesome job. In fact, she'll be here next Friday. She comes once a month with lunch, and we spend a few hours. I give her advice, and so I have a lot of gratitude that I can still be involved in some of these issues. Thanks to the governor and Judy and other people that are active. So not only am I writing about it, but I'm actually able to influence it a little bit. The governor's been incredibly responsive. Today she is actually with a friend of mine up above Rangeley fishing. A lot of people don't know Janet loves to fish. And he lives
Fly fish or spin cast?
fly fish.
Wow.
They're way up above the Parmigiani Gate. He has a camp, and
That's so
and Judy
awesome.
went too. So Janet and Judy.
Oh, that's so great. I'm learning to fly fish
Are you?
also. Yes. Well,
Good for
I've been
you.
working with the Orvis Company for several years
Oh, that's
now.
right.
Yeah. So
you have top-notch.
I do. I have one of those H3 rods, which is they say accurate from any distance. Of course, the operator has got to be accurate too. But
One of the fellows in our care group, Dan, his wife has ALS, and he's an avid angler, and he makes bamboo rods. So he made a bamboo rod for my 5-year-old granddaughter, and it's about 3 feet long with a line that's about 5 feet long. And she doesn't even care about catching fish. She loves to cast that thing.
Yeah.
And
I find it very therapeutic.
Well, we bought a camp, Camp Phoenix, on the edge of Baxter Park. It's an old sporting camp. And the guy turned it into a condominium. So we own a cabin in the land in common. And the backyard is Baxter Park. But I had never fly fished, and it's fly fishing only. So I had to learn there, and then my kids had to learn. My dad had to learn. And my favorite story is Hillary was 8 years old, and she's in the front of the boat, and I'm in the back. We're fishing the same fly. She catches 9 fish. I catch nothing. She feels sorry. She says, Dad, let's switch places in line. So I went up and took her line. She came back and took my line. Her first catch, she catches a fish.
Oh, gosh.
I'll never forget that.
Well, Bonnie Holding is a good friend of mine.
Oh,
You probably know Bonnie, who was the first woman to work in the fly fishing department at L.L. Bean.
Yes.
And she has been helping me learn.
Oh, she's awesome.
Well, she'll tell you that women learn much better than men because they have sort of better rhythm.
No kidding.
So
that's why my young girl did better than me.
I think that's why Hillary might have.
She was a female.
Yeah, I think that might have something to do with it. And Orvis is part of this 50-50 on the water, where they hope that 50% of all anglers will be women. Well,
that is growing tremendously.
Yes, I know. It's really very exciting.
I really know a lot of women now that like to fish, but I think a lot of people don't know that the governor is a fanatic angler. She loves to fly fish.
I'm going to have to see what we can do about that as far as
Well, she didn't want me to write about her favorite places,
Oh, no.
Keep those secret.
But we'll have to at least get a photo of her with her hip waders.
You should do an interview with her about fishing and outdoor stuff.
Yes, well, she is on our upcoming guest list for the PR Maven podcast. So
great.
We're going to have to get that scheduled.
People also don't understand Janet has an amazing sense of humor. She is very funny.
Well, that does run in her family. I know Dora Ann and Paul and Peter, and I know they all like to laugh.
And they're all friends of mine. They're great people.
Well, I look at the Smith family and the Mills family as being iconic Maine families, and I think a lot of it has to do with having really great parents who raised them all right and raised them to read books and care about history.
Lucky, our mom was home with us, and it was the old traditional way of growing up. And my sister Edie works for Angus, and Gordon was head of Maine Medical Association for years, and that was very helpful because when I was diagnosed, Gordon picked this fabulous neurologist for me, Dr. Stephanie Lash in Rockport. She has a lot of ALS patients, and she's just been amazing help, which makes a big difference when you have a doctor that a lot of times we just talk to her on the phone and she'll do things for us. But now Janet picked Gordon to do the opioid task force, and he is working so hard. It's incredible. I mean, he's enthused about it, but What a job.
I know. Sometimes it must feel overwhelming.
You should interview Gordon
I know. I
sometime.
was just thinking
Yeah.
that. I think we'll have to add Gordon to the list
Yeah.
of guests as well.
Yeah, you might as well interview Edie while you're doing
Yes. Well, I've been a big fan of Edie, even though she did go to Bowdoin and I went to
Well-
Colby, but that's okay. You know, the mules and the
Wow.
black bears can get along.
it. I said, Gordon and I walked to school a mile every day, our whole school career. And from day one, Edie got driven. And then Gordon and I went to University of Maine at Orono.
Yeah.
Edie goes to Bowdoin.
Oh, yeah.
So she's been spoiled.
Well, I have two older brothers also who would tell you the same
Yeah.
thing, that I got a much
Yeah,
better deal than they ever got.
exactly.
My parents were a little more relaxed, you know,
Yeah.
and they were, you know, were a little more comfortable. And yeah, so my brother Walter is still to this day jealous of
Wow.
me because I live in Maine and he lives in Florida.
We had a big group that played basketball in my yard all year long. If it was snowing, a couple guys be shoveling while the rest of us played. But we had to stop at 8 o'clock in the evening because Edie's room was up above us and she was going to bed.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm telling you,
That Edie.
if you interview Edie, I want to participate.
Okay.
I'll give you some questions.
Maybe we should call her up right now since we've
Yeah.
got her set
Oh,
up.
no. No, let's not do that.
Okay. So I know you're a big reader, and I admire that so much, George. And is there a book or a website or an app that you have found helpful, either professionally or in dealing with your
Why?
ALS?
You mean beyond your book, of course.
Oh, well,
Which
thank
was
you. Yes,
fabulous.
thank you.
Since I've been reviewing books for main publishers, I'm just amazed at how many great writers we have. And my friends have been bringing me books. I don't remember any of the titles, but that are inspiring. There's a book right here. If you just, oh no, it isn't right.
Oh, that's your book, A Lifetime of Hunting and Fishing.
Yes.
The Ones That Got Away and the Ones That Didn't by George Smith.
I just posted a review of a lady. She had a terrible childhood, and adulthood. She was on drugs, and she discovered ocean fishing, and it saved her life. And she wrote a book about it, and it is amazing, these stories that people will bring.
So is this the one you're talking about?
Well, that's another one. This couple lived in Maine, and were very independent. They built their own house a mile from the road, and they didn't even have an outhouse. They went to the bathroom in the woods.
Oh boy,
They didn't
that
have
wouldn't
water,
be for me.
no electricity. But over time, they did all kinds of jobs to make a living. At one point, they had hundreds of sheep and 35,000 chickens. I mean,
That's a lot of eggs.
Yeah, and it's an amazing story.
So we'll
really.
put this in the show notes, but the book is called Whatever It Takes by May Davidson.
Yeah,
7 Decades of True Love, Hard Work, and No Regrets.
it's
I
astonishing.
like that title because, you know, I'm sort of like that about my business. Like,
Yeah.
I will do whatever it takes, if it's day or night, if it's Sunday or whatever. I mean, that's the way I was brought up in business.
And that was my career.
Is you do whatever it takes. You go wherever you need to go. You call whoever, you know, you were talking about being aggressive. I like to think of it as being assertive. That's a little less edgy, but you call, if I have to call the president of the United States to get my job done, I'll do it. And I feel like that's an attitude of perseverance and tenacity.
It's also a sense of confidence in your work.
That's true.
You know you're doing a great job. In all my career, I had no trouble calling anybody. And I didn't work in the same office. A lot of people don't know this, because everybody that came would want to visit with me. I never get anything done. I worked at home, and then I was at the legislature a lot. And when
but
I
you
wasn't
did
there,
whatever it took.
I traveled the state. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, you do.
Yeah.
That's a great book, but there's a lot of inspiring stories that people have brought me. And not just ALS, but a lot of illnesses.
And then you were talking also about children's books, and here's a beautiful one, The Canoe
You know,
Maker.
this is based on the Passamaquoddies. It's a story about them and how they made canoes right from the birch bark trees. It's amazing.
The Canoe
really.
Maker by David Moses Bridges, Passamaquoddy birch bark artisan.
And they had literally made their canoes out of birch trees.
Wow.
Yeah, brilliant.
Beautiful. Well, George, we just need to wrap up, unfortunately, but maybe we're going to have to come back for a second episode.
I think you're all set the rest of your podcast. I'll be your guest.
Okay. Well, you and Edie and
Yeah, you could just do our family.
Gordon.
I think one time I would like to interview you.
Oh.
See?
Well, there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get even.
It's a deal.
Okay.
It's a deal. I'm not shy, so I won't hold back.
Okay.
But how can people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you?
Everything's on my website, georgesmithmaine.com.
Right.
But
George
my email is georgesmithmaine@gmail.com.
Okay.
And those are the two easiest ways.
And your Facebook?
And I'm on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do hear from lots of people.
Well, and you were saying how you have a network of people who have definitely helped you
Oh, yeah.
with all kinds of things. And again, that's really the premise of the PR Maven podcast, is that having a network of connections that are both personal and professional will lead to a happier and more fulfilling life and a more successful career. So I think you're an example of that.
Well, that is so true.
Yeah.
And, I just feel really fortunate that despite my illness, a lot of good things are happening. I've been getting awards. This is the funny part. And I love it when I get a letter from somebody who says, George, I didn't usually agree with you, but, so now I have an illness, everybody likes me, Nancy. So it's not all bad.
You're right. Well, I think you're a real role model, and I feel that
thank you.
The gratitude, the attitude of gratitude is definitely a thing that has helped you and would help pretty much anybody in life, right?
You just have to deal with it and do the best you can.
Right.
But it helps to have so many wonderful friends.
Yeah.
And family.
And to live in a great state like Maine.
It is.
Yeah. Well, thank you, George. And I want to thank all of our listeners for joining us for this wonderful conversation today. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at nancy@prmaven.com. And I just want to remind you that this podcast is brought to you by Marshall Communications, creator of the 65-step Marshall Plan strategic process. And to learn more about the Marshall Plan, go to marshallpr.com/MarshallPlan. And also, we do Alexa flash briefings. So you can always say, Alexa, play the PR Maven podcast, or Alexa, play the PR Maven flash briefing. So that's something. Do you have an Alexa device, George?
I have no idea, Nancy.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to have to talk to you about that too. But anyway, thanks for joining us today. And remember to keep building your relationships and embracing all the new technology. And have a great week, PR Maven Nation. That's it for this week's episode. I'd like to thank you for listening. And if you feel that you've gotten value out of today's conversation, consider leaving a 5-star review on iTunes or whatever app you're using to tune in. If you haven't subscribed yet, you should do so. I release a new episode each week, and subscribing will make sure you get an alert when there's a new episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation by going to prmaven.com/nation and clicking join. It's free, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you have an Alexa-enabled device, be sure to add the PR Maven Marketing Minute to your daily flash briefing menu. Thanks again for listening, and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.